All right, here we go. We are going to start unboxing this Hollywood Legends collection, Gone with the Wind Scarlett O'Hara Barbie doll. And as I unbox it, I'm just going to let my computer tell the narrative surrounding this particular doll in my life while I just quietly focus on unboxing her. So here we go.
So, today we are going to be unboxing my very first Barbie that was ever purchased for me, of a quality I would call a collector Barbie, not a play with Barbie. She was purchased as a Christmas present, and we will get into that in just a minute. But first, I wanna say, before anybody gets upset that I'm unboxing the Scarlett O'Hara red dress Barbie, please understand I have a second one in a box that's in much better condition. And the box I'm taking this doll out of tonight is in terrible shape. It has a lot of damage and may have some mold growing on it. On top of that, you can tell this doll has been shook in her box one too many times. Her hair is getting a little crazy and her earrings are all flipped up and stuck in her hair. The only way I can fix her is to just go ahead and unbox her. And I've got a new curio case on the way, so she won't be sitting out long without proper protection. Now, getting back to the story that goes with this doll, I want to say this was around Christmas of 2022. I was dating a guy who knew I loved Gone with the Wind. I had made him watch the movie early on in our relationship, so he could understand what kind of woman I am. Because if I'm being honest here, I know I can be kind of a bitch like Scarlett. I will drag my kin and close friends through hell and high water to get to the other side of whatever disaster has hit us. And heaven help anyone who gets in my way when I'm truly driven to get something done. I knew we had different politics, but I figured if he watched that movie and noticed how similar I am to Scarlett, he would understand and respect my view on matters of state and society being different than his, and we could just go on our merry little way further into our relationship. I believed I had confirmed that he understood my nature. As for my Christmas present that year, he bought me this particular Barbie, this totally feminist baddie doll, who only used men when necessary to get what she needs, but never let them rule her, despite living in a time when women really couldn't vote. Well, after supporting him in his career goals, and moving to a city I didn't want to move to in support of him, one day we were having a conversation, and out of nowhere he said to me, "I don't believe women should vote." Now, I knew he had been watching red pill content, and it was influencing him, but I was taking steps to manage that situation. I'd even talked him into listening to Of Boys and Men on audiobook with me when we took long drives. He was struggling with the knowledge being imparted in that book, that men are victims of patriarchy too, but we did make it to chapter 4 until he said what he said. For a little further background, one time, we had a long drive and he was asleep in the car with his headphones on, and I was listening to an audiobook about the female pharaoh Hatshepsut. He woke up mid-audiobook and just exclaimed, "I'm an anti-feminist." That's probably when I should have left him, but I knew he was a misinformed individual. So I figured I could salvage the situation by correcting his subpar knowledge of history and how it's been subverted by the influencers he listens to. That's how I got to the point with him of getting him to listen to the audiobook of Boys and Men. If it was written by a woman like Ryan Eisler, author of The Chalice and the Blade, he'd turn his nose up before we got through the introduction. But since this other book was written by a man, he could tolerate it. Anyways, to get back to the main story, he said what he said about women's rights and I was shocked. It's like I was listening to a man talk to me about my rights in 1919. And, as if the universe was giving me a sign, my mother had called me only a short time before he said what he said, all excited because my grandfather had figured out we were related to Susan B. Anthony. Obviously not a descendant of her directly. She's pretty much a confirmed lesbian who never had any children. But, apparently we are descendants of a close relative of hers. So for him to say that, also knowing I have a deep interest in politics, to the point that I almost majored in political science instead of history at university, and knowing that I'm basically the 2020s version of Scarlett O'Hara, who she was as a character and what she represents as a feminist icon, was truly bizarre to say the very least. And of course, it was relationship suicide. But, being the kind person that I am, knowing people often say stupid things when they aren't thinking, and are caught up in some misinformation, I decided to let the issue rest overnight, let him sleep on what he said, and then get back to me the next day. Well, the next day rolled around and he altered his statement, but only altered it to make it worse. He said maybe it's not that all women shouldn't vote, just some women, and I'm like, so you mean just the ones that agree with you? Of course, that opened up the opportunity to point out the fatal flaw in his argument, because voting is not something that you're only allowed to do if you agree with one particular red pill dude, running around without much to offer this world. I barely had to call him out on that flaw before he backtracked and changed his tune to a new one. Instead of saying all women shouldn't vote, or maybe just some women shouldn't vote, he decided, well, I guess what I would prefer is if people that voted were only allowed to vote if they had skin in the game. So, when I heard him say the right to vote can only be extended to those who have skin in the game, I'm thinking of a situation you would see someplace like South Korea or Israel, where military service is required of all citizens. No, that's not what he meant at all. What he meant was that only people that own land should be allowed to vote. Here's where this argument gets interesting. He said all this to me as we were standing in the apartment he was renting, as I was already getting ready to pack my bags and leave and go back to my house in the country where I own land. So technically, if right to vote is based on land ownership, then in that relationship, out of the two of us, the only one who would hold the right to vote would actually be me, the woman. Also, I just want to point out that right to vote through land ownership is basically a description of many of the southern antebellum states in America. It's literally a strategy wealthy plantation owners used to keep slavery legal, by using that strategy as a way to block white men, who would otherwise be eligible to vote, but didn't have enough money to own land, and were oppressed by the wealthy plantation class themselves, out of the voting booth, where they would likely vote slavery out so that they could have jobs and not live in extreme poverty. Anyways, we had a whole civil war about this and got rid of that requirement to vote in every state in our union, and I don't see us bringing that requirement back anytime soon by either the right or the left, especially the left. Most Americans today can't afford a house, much less large tracts of land. But how bizarre in the end? How weird is it to be in a relationship with a woman who is strong-willed and hyper-educated on the topic of history, and you're gonna actually say to her, I don't believe women should vote, and then think you'll survive that debate on any level. Now that I'm on the other side of that relationship, I do feel like I have to ask every guy I go on a date with now what he thinks about women voting, just in case he has a red pill answer, because I don't need any more of my energy drained or time wasted by those fools. But it has been fun getting every other guy's reaction to the story, especially because, of course, when someone asks you a question that bizarre, anyone would naturally want to know the story behind it. Good news, this issue does not seem to be rooted in politics. I've told this story to left-wing and right-wing men, and all of them unanimously think my ex is an absurd person, dooming himself to a life of involuntary celibacy. Their words, not mine. I guess at the end of the day, the joke's on him. He almost never took my advice about anything, and now his life is a hot mess, and I'm happily living independent of that stupid relationship. And now, I've done so well financially, not wasting any more money on men, that I'm able to afford to keep 2 residences, and a glorious Barbie doll collection. And now, I never miss an opportunity to vote. Even if it's a rinky-dink municipal election about almost nothing, I still show up. And, before I forget, I gotta say, shout out to my boy Ken. He has brought me more joy than most real men ever have. It's really saying something when a plastic model of a man is better company than some of the actual men you meet in the real world.
And here she is, Scarlett O'Hara Barbie, unboxed. We're still going to need to fix that hair, but the earring isn't caught in the hair anymore. I don't see any mold on the dress, so it really was just the box. Everything else was fine in the end. And oh, one thing I've never noticed before, because all of my others are in their box, she has the old style 70s eyelashes. I don't know if this is reading on camera for people, but she has the plugged eyelashes like a 70s Malibu Barbie. That's pretty cool. You look good, girl. We're going to get you in your stand and in your curio case soon.